The dust cloud rose behind the westbound train as it pulled away from Valentine Station, and Hannah Harper stood alone on the weathered platform with her single carpetbag clutched in both hands, watching the last streak of hope disappear into the Nebraska horizon. She had traveled over 1,000 miles from Philadelphia to meet Thomas Whitfield, the man who had promised through carefully written letters to marry her and build a life together on his ranch. But 3 hours of waiting in the September heat of 1884 had proven what her heart had feared all along: he was not coming. The station agent, a graying man with sympathetic eyes, had already retreated inside his office, leaving Hannah to face the reality that she was stranded in a frontier town with $17 to her name and nowhere to go. The sun blazed overhead, turning the wooden platform into a griddle beneath her worn leather boots, and sweat trickled down her spine under the layers of her traveling dress. She was 22 years old, alone, and had burned every bridge back east when she sold her few possessions to afford the train ticket west. Her aunt had warned her that mail-order arrangements were dangerous gambles, but Hannah had been desperate to escape the suffocating confines of factory work and the constant pressure to marry the butcher's son, a man twice her age with wandering hands and whiskey breath. She forced herself to move, to think, to do something other than stand there like a lost child. The platform creaked under her feet as she walked toward the station office, her mind racing through impossible options. Perhaps she could find work in town, save enough to return east, though the thought made her stomach clench with shame. Perhaps Thomas had simply been delayed, though 3 hours seemed beyond any reasonable excuse. Perhaps she had made the greatest mistake of her life. The door to the station office swung open before she reached it, and the agent stepped out with an uncomfortable expression. "Miss Harper, I hate to say this, but I need to close up for a few hours. There is a boarding house 2 streets over, Mrs. Patterson's place, if you need somewhere to wait." Hannah nodded, not trusting her voice. She picked up her carpetbag and descended the platform steps, her eyes scanning the dusty main street of Valentine. The town was larger than she had expected, with a bank, general store, saloon, and various other establishments lining both sides of the wide thoroughfare. Wagons and horses moved back and forth, and people went about their business with the purposeful stride of those who belonged somewhere. She did not belong here, and everyone who glanced her way seemed to know it. She had taken perhaps a dozen steps toward what she hoped was the direction of the boarding house when a voice called out behind her, "Madam, you look like you could use some help." Hannah turned to find a tall cowboy walking toward her, his spurs jingling softly with each step. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-darkened skin and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his wide-brimmed hat. His eyes were a striking shade of blue-gray that seemed to see right through her careful composure, and something in his expression was kind rather than predatory, which was the only reason she did not immediately turn away. "I am managing, thank you," she said, though her voice wavered slightly. He stopped a respectful distance away and gestured toward her bag. "Forgive me for being forward, but I saw you waiting at that station for the better part of the afternoon. I was across the street at the telegraph office, and I could not help but notice. Were you expecting someone?" The simple question, asked with such genuine concern, nearly undid her. Hannah felt her eyes burn with tears she refused to shed in front of a stranger. "My intended was supposed to meet me. He did not come." The cowboy's expression shifted from curiosity to anger on her behalf, which surprised her. What kind of man leaves a lady stranded at a train station? "Do you have somewhere to go?" "I was heading to the boarding house," Hannah said, lifting her chin with as much dignity as she could muster. "I will figure something out. Mrs. Patterson's place is decent enough, but it costs $1 a night, and jobs are not easy to come by in town, especially for a lady new to the area." He paused, seeming to wrestle with something, then met her eyes directly. "My name is Lucas Vance. I work at the Triple Creek Ranch about 10 miles north of here. The owner, Mr. Callahan, is a widower with 2 young daughters, and he has been looking for someone to help with the house and the girls since his wife passed last year. The pay is fair, and you would have your own room and meals included." Hannah stared at him, unsure whether to feel hopeful or suspicious. "Why would you offer this to a complete stranger?" "Because leaving you here alone would not sit right with me," Lucas said simply. "And because I know what it is like to be stranded with no good options. I came out here 5 years ago with nothing but the clothes on my back and a lot of bad luck behind me. Someone gave me a chance, and I would like to pay that forward." There was honesty in his voice that Hannah wanted desperately to trust, but she had just been abandoned by a man who had written her beautiful letters full of promises. "How do I know this is not some kind of trick?" "You do not," Lucas admitted. "But I can take you to meet Reverend Matthews first if that would ease your mind. He knows me and can vouch that I am not a scoundrel. Then you can decide if you want to ride out to the ranch or stay in town." The offer was more than reasonable, and Hannah realized she had very few alternatives. She could spend her limited money on a boarding house while searching for work that might not exist, or she could take a chance on this stranger's kindness. Something in Lucas Vance's steady gaze made her want to believe him. "All right," she said quietly. "I would like to meet the Reverend." Lucas smiled, and it transformed his face from merely handsome to genuinely warm. "Good. His church is just down the street. Come on, I will carry your bag." He reached for her carpet bag, and Hannah reluctantly let him take it. They walked side by side down the main street, and she was acutely aware of the curious glances from other townspeople. Lucas seemed unbothered by the attention, greeting several people by name as they passed. He led her to a small white church with a cross above the door and knocked firmly. The man who answered was in his 50s with graying hair and a gentle smile. "Lucas, good to see you. What brings you by?" "Reverend Matthews, this is Miss Hannah Harper. She just arrived on the afternoon train and her intended failed to meet her. I offered to take her out to the Triple Creek to see if Mr. Callahan might hire her to help with the girls, but she wanted someone to vouch for my character first." The Reverend's expression turned serious as he looked at Hannah. "I am sorry to hear of your difficulties, Miss Harper. But I can assure you that Lucas is an honorable young man. I have known him since he arrived in Valentine, and he has never given anyone reason to doubt his integrity. If he says he will help you, he means it." Hannah felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Thank you, Reverend. That is reassuring to hear. Where was your intended from?" the Reverend asked gently. "Perhaps I know him." "Thomas Whitfield. He claimed to own a ranch somewhere in the area," Hannah said, watching both men's faces carefully. Lucas and the Reverend exchanged a look that made Hannah's stomach sink. "There is no Thomas Whitfield in this county," the Reverend said quietly. "I know every rancher within 30 miles. I am afraid you may have been deceived." The words hit Hannah like a physical blow. She had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed made everything real in a terrible way. She had been played for a fool by a man who probably sent similar letters to dozens of desperate women, collecting whatever money or goods he could swindle from them. "I see," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas's hand touched her elbow gently, steadying her. "Come on. Let us get you out to the ranch. You can have a hot meal and a safe place to sleep, and tomorrow everything will look clearer." Hannah nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The Reverend wished them well, and Lucas guided her back to the main street where a sturdy sorrel horse was tied to the hitching post outside the general store. He secured her carpet bag to the saddle and then turned to her. "Have you ever ridden horseback?" he asked. "Only a few times when I was younger," Hannah admitted. "All right. I will help you up and you will ride in front of me. It is about an hour's ride to the ranch." He placed his hands around her waist, his grip firm but respectful, and lifted her onto the horse as though she weighed nothing. Then he swung up behind her, one arm coming around her waist to hold the reins. Hannah stiffened at the intimate contact, but Lucas kept a careful distance between them as much as the saddle allowed. "Just relax," he said near her ear. "I have got you." They rode out of town at an easy pace, and Hannah watched the buildings give way to open prairie. The land stretched endlessly in all directions, covered in golden grass that rippled like water in the breeze. The sky was impossibly vast, a blue dome unmarred by clouds, and the air smelled of sage and earth and something wild she could not name. Despite everything that had happened, she felt a strange stirring in her chest, something like freedom or possibility, or maybe just the first breath after drowning. "What made you come west?" Lucas asked after they had ridden in silence for a while. Hannah considered how much to reveal. "I worked in a textile factory in Philadelphia. The hours were long, the pay was terrible, and the conditions were worse. I wanted something different, something better. When Thomas's letters started arriving in response to my advertisement, he described a life that seemed like everything I had dreamed of." "What did he promise you?" Lucas's voice was gentle, curious rather than judgmental. "A home, a family, a partnership. He wrote about watching sunsets over his land and building something that would last. He made it sound like paradise." Hannah laughed bitterly. "I suppose I was foolish to believe it." "You were not foolish. You were hopeful, and there is nothing wrong with that." "He was the one who chose to be dishonest." Lucas paused. "For what it is worth, the sunsets here really are spectacular. That part was not a lie." They crested a rise, and Hannah saw the ranch spread out below them. A sturdy two-story house stood surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and a large barn. Cattle dotted the hillsides in the distance, and a creek glinted silver in the afternoon sun. It was beautiful in a raw, unpolished way that made her heart ache. "That is the Triple Creek," Lucas said. "Mr. Callahan runs about 500 head of cattle and breeds some of the finest horses in Nebraska. He is a fair man, sometimes too generous for his own good. His daughters are 8 and 10, Lily and Rose. They are good girls, but they miss their mother something fierce." As they rode down toward the ranch, Hannah saw a man emerge from the barn. He was in his late 30s, stocky and strong, with dark hair going gray at the temples. He watched their approach with obvious curiosity. Lucas dismounted and then helped Hannah down. "Mr. Callahan, this is Miss Hannah Harper. She arrived in town today under unfortunate circumstances, and I thought she might be the answer to your problems with the girls." Mr. Callahan looked Hannah over with an assessing but not unkind gaze. "What kind of unfortunate circumstances?" Hannah squared her shoulders and met his eyes directly. "I came here to marry a man who does not exist. I have no place to go and limited funds, but I am a hard worker and a quick learner. If you need help with your household and your daughters, I can provide that in exchange for room and board until I can earn enough to make other arrangements." She expected skepticism or pity, but Mr. Callahan's expression softened with understanding. A mail-order arrangement gone wrong. "You are not the first person to be fooled by such schemes, and you will not be the last. Come inside and meet my girls. If they take to you, we can discuss terms." The house was well built but clearly lacking a woman's touch. Dust-covered surfaces, Dishes were piled in the kitchen, and general disorder reigned. Two girls sat at the kitchen table attempting to do schoolwork, and they looked up with wide eyes when Hannah entered. "Lily, Rose, this is Miss Harper. She might be coming to stay with us and help around the house," Mr. Callahan said. The younger girl, Lily, had her father's dark hair and solemn expression. Rose was taller and lighter, with freckles across her nose. They both studied Hannah with the frank curiosity of children. "Can you cook?" Rose asked bluntly. "Yes," Hannah said. "Can you tell me what your favorite meal is?" "Chicken and dumplings," both girls said in unison, then grinned at each other. "I make excellent chicken and dumplings," Hannah said. "My grandmother taught me." That seemed to satisfy them. Mr. Callahan showed Hannah to a small but clean room on the second floor, and they agreed on terms. She would handle the cooking, cleaning, laundry, and helping the girls with their schooling in exchange for room, board, and $20 a month. It was more than fair, almost generous, and Hannah felt the first glimmer of hope since stepping off the train. Lucas had stayed for dinner, which Hannah prepared from the ingredients she found in the kitchen. The chicken was a bit tough, and the dumplings not quite as fluffy as her grandmother's, but everyone ate heartily and complimented her cooking. She found herself sneaking glances at Lucas across the table, noticing how he teased the girls gently and how his laugh was deep and genuine. He caught her looking once and smiled, and she felt heat rise in her cheeks. After dinner, Lucas prepared to ride back to the bunkhouse on the far side of the property. He found Hannah on the porch, staring out at the darkening sky. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything you did today. I do not know what would have happened if you had not helped me. You would have figured something out. You strike me as the resourceful type," Lucas said. He hesitated, then added, "I ride past the house most days. If you need anything, just let me know." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Hannah asked, turning to face him. "You do not know me at all." Lucas was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful in the lantern light spilling from the house. "5 years ago, I was 17 and running from a stepfather who liked to use his fists more than his words. I hopped a freight train heading west with no plan and no prospects. When I got to Valentine, I was half-starved and desperate enough to steal food. Sheriff caught me red-handed, but instead of throwing me in jail, he brought me here. Mr. Callahan gave me a job, taught me everything I know about ranching, and treated me like I was worth something. I guess I learned that sometimes people need a hand up, not judgment." Hannah felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the mild evening air. "I am glad the sheriff caught you," she said softly. Lucas grinned. "Me too. Sleep well, Miss Harper." "Hannah," she corrected. "You can call me Hannah." "Hannah," he repeated, and the way he said her name made her breath catch. "Good night." She watched him ride away into the darkness, his form gradually disappearing into the night, and she realized she was smiling. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Hannah rose early to prepare breakfast, packed lunches for Mr. Callahan and the ranch hands, and spent the mornings cleaning and doing laundry. The afternoons were devoted to the girls, helping them with their lessons and teaching them basic cooking and sewing. The work was hard but satisfying in a way her factory job had never been, and she found herself laughing more than she had in years. Lucas kept his word about riding past the house daily. Sometimes he stopped for a cup of coffee, sometimes he helped her carry water or chop wood, and sometimes he just tipped his hat and exchanged a few words before riding on. But Hannah found herself listening for the sound of his horse, watching for his approach, and feeling disappointed on the rare days when he did not come by. 3 weeks after her arrival, Lucas appeared at the kitchen door on a Sunday afternoon. The girls mentioned they have never seen the swimming hole downstream, I thought I might take them for a few hours if you wanted to come along. The weather is still warm enough." Hannah glanced at Mr. Callahan, who was reading a newspaper in the front room. "Go on," he called out. "You have been working yourself ragged. Take the afternoon off." The swimming hole was a widening in the creek where cottonwood trees provided shade, and the water ran clear and deep. The girls splashed and played while Hannah sat on the bank, her skirts tucked around her legs, watching them with a smile. Lucas settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "They have come alive since you arrived," he said. "Mr. Callahan mentioned it to me. He said the house feels like a home again." "They are wonderful girls," Hannah said. "I have grown quite fond of them." "And what about the rest of us?" Lucas asked, his tone light but his eyes serious. "Have you grown fond of anyone else?" Hannah's heart hammered against her ribs. She had been trying not to think too much about her growing feelings for Lucas, telling herself it was too soon, too foolish to fall for another man after being deceived so badly. But sitting here beside him, with the sun filtering through the leaves and his steady presence beside her, she could not deny the truth. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "though I am not sure I trust my judgment anymore." Lucas reached out and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle around hers. "I am not Thomas Whitfield. I am real, Hannah. What you see is what you get: a cowboy with more ambition than sense, trying to make something of himself out here. But I am honest, and I mean what I say." "And what do you say?" Hannah asked, barely breathing. "That I have been half in love with you since I saw you standing on that train platform looking lost and brave at the same time," Lucas said. "That I find excuses to ride past the house just to catch a glimpse of you. That I lie awake at night thinking about what it would be like to have the right to hold you, to build a life with you." Hannah felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, joyful tears. "I was so angry when Thomas did not show up," she said quietly. "But now, I think maybe it was the best thing that could have happened, because otherwise I never would have met you." Lucas lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "I have been saving my wages for the past 3 years. I have enough to file a homestead claim on a piece of land adjoining the Triple Creek. Mr. Callahan said he would sell me some starter cattle. It would not be much at first, just a small cabin and a lot of hard work, but it would be ours." "Ours," Hannah repeated, her voice trembling. "If you will have me," Lucas said. "I know it is too soon, and I know you came here expecting to marry someone else, but I am asking anyway. Marry me, Hannah. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that I am worthy of the trust you place in me." Hannah thought about the life she had left behind, the factory and the gray Philadelphia streets, and the suffocating sense that she would never be more than she was. She thought about Thomas Whitfield and his empty promises, and how devastated she had been on that train platform. And then she thought about the past 3 weeks, the laughter and the hard work, and the way her heart lifted every time she saw Lucas riding toward her. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." Lucas let out a breath that sounded suspiciously like a sob of relief, and then he was pulling her close, his arms strong and sure around her. The girls' squeals of delight echoed across the water as they witnessed the embrace, and Hannah found herself laughing against Lucas's chest. They were married 3 weeks later in Reverend Matthews's small church, with Mr. Callahan and the girls in attendance along with what seemed like half the town. Hannah wore a simple blue dress that Rose and Lily had helped her sew, and Lucas wore his best shirt and a string tie. When he said his vows, his voice was steady and sure, and when he kissed her, it felt like coming home. Mr. Callahan gifted them a week's leave from their duties, and Lucas took Hannah to the land he had claimed. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way, with rolling hills and a small stream running through the property. The foundation for a cabin had already been laid, and Lucas explained his plans for the house, the barn, the corrals, his words tumbling over each other in his excitement. "We will build it together," Hannah said, taking his hand. "Every piece of it." They spent the week camping under the stars, planning their future and learning each other in the way newlyweds do. Lucas was patient and tender, and Hannah discovered that intimacy with someone you truly loved was nothing like the clinical descriptions she had received from her aunt. It was joy and connection, and a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. When they returned to the Triple Creek, they threw themselves into their work with renewed energy. Lucas spent every spare moment working on the cabin, and Hannah helped whenever she could, learning how to mix mortar and lay stones for the fireplace. Mr. Callahan often sent some of the other ranch hands to assist, and slowly but surely, their home began to take shape. By spring of 1885, the cabin was finished, a sturdy three-room structure with a stone fireplace, glass windows, and a porch that faced the sunset. They moved in on a Saturday, carrying their few possessions across the property with the help of the girls, who were both tearful and excited about the change. "You will visit us all the time, right?" Lily asked, clinging to Hannah's skirt. "Every week," Hannah promised. "And you will come stay with us sometimes, too." The first night in their own home, Lucas and Hannah sat on the porch steps watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky blazed with orange and pink and gold, and Hannah thought about Thomas Whitfield's letters describing this very sight. He had been right about one thing: the sunsets here were spectacular. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas asked, his arm around her shoulders. "That I am exactly where I am supposed to be," Hannah said. "That every bad thing that happened was leading me here to you, to this life." Lucas kissed her temple. "I love you, Hannah Vance." "I love you too," she whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Their life together was not easy. The first year of ranching nearly broke them. A harsh winter killed several of their cattle. A summer drought dried up part of the stream, and money was constantly tight. But they worked side by side through every challenge, and slowly, their little ranch began to prosper. Lucas proved to be a natural cattleman, and Hannah discovered she had a gift for breeding chickens that laid better than any in the county. She sold eggs and chickens to townspeople, and the extra income helped them purchase more cattle. In the winter of 1886, Hannah discovered she was pregnant. She told Lucas on Christmas morning, and he picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests. When their son was born in August of 1887, they named him James, after Lucas's father, who had died when Lucas was young. The baby had Lucas's dark hair and Hannah's green eyes, and holding him for the first time, Hannah understood in a profound way what it meant to have your heart living outside your body. Motherhood was exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Lucas was an attentive father, walking the floor with James when he was colicky, changing diapers without complaint, and singing off-key lullabies that somehow always worked. Hannah watched him with their son and fell in love with him all over again. Rose and Lily, now 12 and 14, were frequent visitors and devoted to their baby brother. Mr. Callahan had eventually remarried a widow from town named Catherine, who was kind and capable, and made him happy. The expanded family gathered often for Sunday dinners that rotated between households, and Hannah marveled at how full her life had become. When James was 2, Hannah became pregnant again. Their daughter was born in the spring of 1890, and they named her Grace. She was tiny and perfect, with Lucas's blue-gray eyes and a disposition so sunny that she rarely cried. James was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything, and Lucas built him a small stool so he could stand beside the cradle and watch her. The ranch continued to grow. Lucas had a talent for spotting quality cattle, and their herd was now one of the finest in the region. They built a proper barn, expanded the house to include 2 more bedrooms, and even managed to purchase a piano for Hannah, who played the few songs her mother had taught her and was teaching herself more from a book ordered from back east. One evening in the fall of 1892, Hannah stood at the kitchen window watching Lucas play with James and Grace in the yard. James, now 5, was trying to teach his sister how to throw a ball, and Grace's delighted shrieks echoed across the property. Lucas caught Hannah's eye through the window and grinned, and she smiled back, her heart so full it almost hurt. She thought about the girl she had been 8 years ago, standing on that train platform in Valentine with a carpet bag and no prospects. She thought about Thomas Whitfield and his false promises, and how devastated she had been. And she thought about Lucas riding toward her, offering help when she needed it most, offering love when she had not known she was searching for it. Sometimes the path to where you are meant to be is winding and difficult. Sometimes you have to get lost before you can be found. And sometimes the greatest blessings in life come disguised as disappointments. Hannah turned from the window and went outside to join her family. Lucas looked up as she approached, and the love in his eyes was as strong as it had been on their wedding day, stronger, even tempered by years of shared joys and sorrows, by partnership and commitment, and the deep knowledge that they had chosen each other and would keep choosing each other every single day. "Come here," Lucas said, extending his hand to her. Hannah took it and let him pull her into the game. James threw the ball and it bounced off Hannah's skirt, sending Grace into peals of laughter. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed their evening song. This was her life, the life she had dreamed of, but never quite believed possible. A home built with her own hands, children whose laughter filled the rooms, a husband who loved her fiercely and tenderly in equal measure, and land that stretched endlessly under a vast Nebraska sky. Years continued to pass in the gentle rhythm of ranch life. James grew tall and strong, following Lucas everywhere and learning the ranching trade with enthusiasm. Grace proved to have her mother's head for business and her father's way with animals. In 1895, Hannah gave birth to another son whom they named Daniel. He was the wildest of the 3 children, always climbing things and getting into trouble, and he kept them laughing with his antics. The ranch continued to prosper beyond their wildest dreams. By 1897, they had the largest herd in the county, employed 4 full-time ranch hands, and had built a proper bunkhouse for them. Lucas's reputation as a fair employer and honest businessman spread, and they never lacked for good workers. Rose Callahan married a banker from town, and Lily became a schoolteacher, taking over the Valentine schoolhouse where all 3 Vance children eventually attended. Mr. Callahan passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1896, leaving equal shares of the Triple Creek to his daughters and to Lucas, whom he had come to regard as the son he never had. Lucas was moved to tears by the bequest, but chose to buy out the girls' shares so they could have the money for their own families, keeping the 2 ranches running as cooperative enterprises. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1895, Lucas took Hannah back to the swimming hole where he had first told her he loved her. The children were staying with Rose for the night, and they had the evening to themselves, a rare luxury. "I have been thinking," Lucas said as they sat by the water watching the light fade. "About that day I found you at the train station. I almost did not stop. I almost decided it was not my business and rode on. Can you imagine how different everything would be if I had made that choice?" Hannah shuddered. "I prefer not to imagine it. "I thank God every day that I stopped," Lucas said quietly. "That I was brave enough to approach you, that you were brave enough to trust me. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Hannah. You and our children and this life we have built. I love you more now than I did 10 years ago, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Hannah kissed him, tasting salt from tears she did not realize she was crying. "You saved me that day, not just from being stranded, but from a life of bitterness and regret. You showed me what love really is, not pretty words and letters, but action and partnership, and choosing each other through everything." They made love under the stars that night, tender and passionate and filled with the deep comfort of two people who knew each other completely. Afterward, lying in Lucas's arms with her head on his chest, Hannah felt peace settle over her like a warm blanket. The years continued their steady march forward. James took over more of the ranch operations as Lucas taught him everything he knew. Grace announced her intention to become a veterinarian, which was nearly unheard of for a woman, but Lucas and Hannah supported her dream and found her an apprenticeship with the town veterinarian. Daniel decided he wanted to join the cavalry, and though Hannah's heart broke at the thought of him leaving, she helped him prepare for the entrance examinations. In 1903, nearly 20 years after that fateful day at the Valentine train station, Hannah and Lucas sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were in their 40s now, their hands calloused from work, their faces lined from weather and laughter. James and his new wife Sarah were living in the original cabin, expecting their first child. Grace was away at a special program in Chicago, learning veterinary medicine under a progressive professor who believed women belonged in the sciences. Daniel was stationed at Fort Robinson, coming home whenever he could get leave. "Do you ever wonder what happened to Thomas Whitfield?" Lucas asked suddenly. "If he was real at all, or just someone using a false name to swindle desperate women?" Hannah considered the question. She rarely thought about Thomas anymore. He had become little more than a footnote in her history, a catalyst rather than a character. "I hope he found whatever he was looking for," she said finally. "And I hope no one else was hurt by his schemes, but mostly I do not think about him at all." "Good," Lucas said, squeezing her hand. "He does not deserve even a moment of your thoughts." "I was thinking earlier about all the things that had to go exactly right for us to be here," Hannah said. "If Thomas had actually shown up, I would have married him and probably been miserable. If you had not been at the telegraph office that day, or if you had not stopped to help me, or if Mr. Callahan had not needed someone, or if any one of 100 things had been different, we would not be sitting here right now." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "I believe some things are meant to be. I believe I was supposed to find you that day, and you were supposed to trust me, and we were supposed to build this life together. Everything that happened before was just the journey to get us here." "Then I am grateful for every step of the journey," Hannah said, "even the painful ones." They sat in comfortable silence as the sky deepened from gold to rose to purple. Somewhere in the barn, a horse whinnied. In the distance, cattle moved across the hillside like shadows. The land they had worked so hard to build stretched around them, solid and enduring, a legacy for their children and grandchildren. Hannah thought about the frightened girl she had been at 22, traveling alone to meet a stranger, risking everything for a chance at a better life. She had been so afraid that day, standing on the train platform watching her last hope disappear. But sometimes the death of one dream makes room for something even better. Sometimes getting lost is the first step toward finding yourself. "I love you," she said to Lucas, the words as natural as breathing after all these years. "I love you too," he replied, pulling her closer. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that." The stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, countless and bright, and Hannah felt the same sense of possibility she had felt all those years ago despite her fear and uncertainty. She had taken a chance on a cowboy who promised to help her, and he had given her the world. Their grandson was born 3 weeks later, a healthy boy that James and Sarah named Lucas after his grandfather. When Lucas held the baby for the first time, tears streamed down his weathered face, and Hannah knew he was thinking the same thing she was, that their love had created all of this, that it would continue long after they were gone, that they had built something that would endure. As they grew older, Hannah and Lucas began to slow down, letting James take over more of the ranch operations while they focused on their grandchildren and each other. They traveled a bit, visiting Grace in Chicago and Daniel at various postings. But they always returned to the ranch, to the land that had been the foundation of their life together. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1915, their children threw them a celebration that brought together friends and family from across the state. The party was held at the ranch, with tables laden with food and music and dancing that lasted until midnight. Hannah danced with Lucas under lanterns strung between the trees, and she marveled at how quickly 3 decades had passed, how much life they had lived together. "Thank you," Lucas whispered in her ear as they swayed to the music, "for saying yes that day by the swimming hole, for taking a chance on a cowboy with nothing but dreams and determination, for building this life with me." "Thank you for finding me," Hannah replied. "For seeing me when I felt invisible, for choosing me every single day since." They kissed, and their children cheered, and Hannah felt young again, as full of hope and joy as she had been at 22, standing beside Lucas in Reverend Matthews's church promising forever. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows. They lost friends to age and illness, celebrated births and weddings, weathered droughts and economic downturns, and always had each other. Their hair turned gray, their steps slowed, but the love between them only deepened with time, becoming as essential as air and water. In 1924, on a warm October evening, Hannah and Lucas sat on their porch watching the sunset. They were in their 60s now, both still sharp-minded but physically slowed by arthritis and time. 5 grandchildren now called the ranch home at various times, and a 6th was on the way. The Vance family name was well respected throughout Nebraska, synonymous with quality cattle and honest dealing. "You remember the first sunset we watched together?" Lucas asked, his hand finding Hannah's as naturally as always. "The day I proposed." "I remember every sunset we have watched together," Hannah said, "but that one especially. I thought my heart might burst from happiness." "Mine too," Lucas said softly. 40 years, Hannah. 40 years since I saw you standing on that train platform. It has gone by so fast, and yet I cannot remember what life was like before you." "There was no life before you," Hannah said. "Not really. Everything before was just waiting." They sat in silence as the sky blazed with color, and Hannah felt a profound sense of completion, of a life well lived and fully experienced. She had no regrets, no what-ifs, no wishes for anything other than what she had been given. Her journey from Philadelphia to Valentine had been the first step in an adventure that exceeded anything she could have imagined. "I love you, Hannah Vance," Lucas said, as he had said countless times over 4 decades. "I love you, Lucas Vance," Hannah replied, as she had replied countless times and would continue to reply for however many days they had left. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, and somewhere in the house behind them, their family gathered for dinner, their voices and laughter filling the home that love had built. This was their legacy, not just the land and the cattle and the buildings, but the love that had sustained it all, the partnership that had weathered every storm, the commitment that had turned two strangers into one unbreakable unit. Hannah leaned her head on Lucas's shoulder, and he pressed a kiss to her hair, and they watched the last light fade from the sky together, just as they had done thousands of times before and would do thousands of times more, God willing. The cowboy had found her when she was lost, and he had taken her home. And that home had become everything she had ever dreamed of, and so much more.